Hello, it's Joey, and today I'm sharing some of my favourite junk journaling techniques as part of a Junk Journal January video collaboration. So I'm making these pre-made junk journal covers like this, and like all of the ones that have gone on the fronts of these. So these are covers for junk journals that you make ahead of time, and then you use one when you need one, so you always have one ready. I find that this really speeds up my process, and it's also a lot of fun. The reason that I really like this technique is not only is it incredibly easy, but the component parts of these junk journal covers are old book pages and really basic supplies, which is indeed what my channel is all about. Things that don't cost a lot and things that are readily available. So I'm using an old book page for the base here. I'm using an image from a book, and I'm using little bits of scrap paper down here in the form of a collage. And I'll show you every step in the process to make junk journal covers like these. Indeed, as usual, I've put together some process steps, so do feel free to take a screenshot of these. And I just wanted to share the phenomenal group of ladies who are also involved in this Junk Journal January collaboration. Meg Journals is organising it, and I've set out here all of the amazing channels. I have the YouTube names and the Instagram names, and this is predominantly an Instagram collaboration, but we do share how we make some of our pages on YouTube too. So be sure to check out all of these fantastic channels and Instagram accounts, and let's get on and make some lovely junk journal covers. So we're going to make a junk journal cover like this using a book page at the back, some form of image that you can take from another book, some collage at the bottom, and then some form of focal point. And I'll show you every step to make these so that you can make the best of your own supplies, and each of these just go on a piece of cardboard or another book page. So I've been using just lightweight cardstock, but another book page would work. I've often used just thick paper from books. This was the one I made for Junk Journal July last year, so this would have worked on the front of one of these too. What we need to do is choose a book page and choose an image, and we're just doing steps 1 and 2 in our process. So gather your book pages to use as the base and select an image for your cover. The type of book page that I like to use comes from this book, and I'll explain why this one really does work for me. So the first key point is to consider the size of your junk journal, and therefore the piece of paper or the book page that you want to use as the backing. The book page can be bigger, obviously, than your cover, because we can trim it down. I quite like to have some white border either side of the text and some at the top and bottom. So something that's close to the size of your junk journal cover would be great. And also think about perhaps the colour and the tone of this book page, because we're really going to make it a feature of our cover as well. The beautiful aged vanilla feel just comes through and gives us that vintage effect. I'm also going to think about, when I choose a book page, the texture. So when I feel it, I like that matte feel, and I quite like books with some variety of font. And in this one I have a bold type in capitals, and I have some smaller text. It's distributed across the page, it's got some numbers on it, and that I really like too, because some of it shows when we add the images, but we allow some to peek through. In terms of an image, I've been using little art pictures, and I'll show you the book that came from. So I acquired this book in a charity shop, and I've been wondering what to do with it. So it's called the Art Book. You can see I've ripped the front off, and I have just been going through it, tearing out pages. Isn't that beautiful? That would work really, really well. And then just tearing down around the white. I even keep the off strip to do something with the scraps. So we could even use this image. Why don't we just tear this one down? So this means that you could use any images for the cover, anything that you have in an old book, make use of your own supplies. What I suggest you use for your image is something again that is proportionate to the size of that junk journal cover. And by that I mean perhaps covering about a third of the space. I quite like to have some gap for the collage, and I like to have some of that book page peeping out behind. So something proportionate to the page, and even the shape doesn't particularly matter. You can see on this one I've used tall and thin. This one is a little bit wider. This one tall and thin as well. I've got some that are more of a horizontal landscape shape. So lots of variety of sizes work, but again, perhaps something that is less than the width of your journal cover and maybe about a third of the height. So with that, we have chosen a book page and we have chosen an image. What we need to do is glue the image onto the book page and add some of these extra features. So we're going to glue our image to the book page and add just a few extra details, and this is step 3. Glue the image to the base and think about adding maybe labels. You could add fabric, you could add washi tape. I like to add all 3, but basically just use whatever you have. I'm going to use a non-liquid glue. I'm going through loads of these sticks. So I use a Pritt stick to attach the image, and for this exercise, for this project, I'm going all the way to the edge, although I am putting a relatively light coating on. And the reason for that is if you want to sew around this, just add a little bit more texture, you can, and you don't want too much glue behind your image getting on your needle. But you don't have to sew this with a sewing machine. This is a project that can be done without a sewing machine, and I'll give you some tips for that too. In terms of placement, I don't like my images to be centre, and I'm also mindful that when I put this piece of book page onto my cardstock, I know that it's actually going to be, let me show you on this one, I know that it's going to be a little bit too long. So in a minute I will trim that down. So I'm just thinking about where I want this image to be relative to the back that it's going to be glued on. And having done that, I can now just have a bit of fun and add some details. And the sorts of details I'm adding are some text in the form of labels and maybe some washi tape, and on some of these I think I've added a little bit of fabric. So let's just add that, and I've chosen quite carefully a couple of labels, and a piece of fabric. And I've just had a little look in my pot and pulled ones out with, again, a bit of a vintage paper centre and some green on this one because it goes with the green in the image. So think about your image, the colours and the tones that are in it, and pull out just a couple of elements to enhance your junk journal cover. Again, in terms of placement, what I look for is a bit of space around the image. So where is the more space? There's a bit more space here perhaps than here. And I'll just take my labels and put them on opposite sides, and if one is further down here, I might put the other one up here just to vary the position. So I don't want 2 on one side, I don't want 2 down here. I want this to be maybe even horizontally there. I'm just lining it up neatly, and I also consider my little rule of thirds, which is, if I can, maybe have 2/3 of the label off and a third of it on the image. On this one I've got a third off and 2/3 on, and it's just again making it a bit more interesting. I'd like to add a bit more texture, so I've got just the tiniest piece of fabric here, and this has a bit of coralline or peach, which looks really similar to the flowers. So again, I want to add this. I don't know that I've got space around my image at the moment, so I might just choose to put that down here and I will put it so that it's not lined up with the edge of that image, because I don't want that continuity, I want variety. I'll just have that down there. The next thing we want to do is either sew around this or add faux stitching, and you can do either depending on what your preference is. So on some of these I've added sewing, and I'd just like to share a few tips that I learned as I did it when I made up a few samples. So we are at the moment on step 4. The stitching I find works best if you perhaps do a zigzag for extra interest and texture, but also keep the stitching on the image. Now I have found lots of YouTubers doing sewing beautifully where the zigzag spans the image and the book page, and that would be great. I have just found that to sew that way is a little bit delicate on the paper, and sometimes it perhaps has a tendency to tear. If I keep the stitching just on the image, I've got 2 layers, and it just seems to work more easily on my sewing machine. It may work differently on yours, and in fact it'd be great, let me know whether you find it easy to span an image and a book page behind. But all I've done on each of these is sew around them. I haven't even worried about whether I can see thread at the top. I quite like that. And sometimes I've actually sewn through the extra embellishment, and sometimes I've gone around it. Here I've gone into running stitch. So the step that I won't show you, but I thought it was important to share the tips, is sewing around this. And in fact I think what I will do is add a bit of washi tape as well, because I feel like I want to do that, and then we'll move on to some of the collage. I have a few pages that I've already sewn. So these are in a variety of shapes. So this one is horizontal. So this one is a little bit bigger. I've used fabric down here and also a little bit of washi tape that I really like using in a yellow ochre. This one I've got labels on top, so on 2 sides. Labels on that one, and the one that I showed you earlier I've got washi tape here as well. So what I'm going to do is take one of these. Which one shall we pick? Which shall we pick to collage? How about this one? There's plenty of space underneath, so we can have a go with this. And in fact you can see this was maybe an earlier example. I did try going off the image, and I did say I find it easier if I stay on the image. Let's set these aside and do just a little bit of collage on this to fill it out with whatever we have and really make that image pop, really make it a fantastic and beautiful junk journal cover. So I want to fill out this space down here, and for that all I need is maybe some little bits of old book pages and scraps from my tub, so I'll use some of that. I've also got some little bugs. I don't know why, but I like these little images. These are from Artie Mays. I might pick one that, I don't know why, but they just work so well as a little bit of interest. That's a nice colour to go with that. Yeah, I'll have one of those. And I've got some lovely papers here from my Collage wallet. So tones of pale greens and vanillas, pale browns, gentle hues. I might just use a few little elements from there, and I'm just going to fill out just a bit of this and then add a sentiment. So nothing too complicated, very easy. Let's get that. Let's get that glue on, and my usual technique applies at this stage. So I am putting glue not right to the edge of these pieces so that I can follow up by tucking pieces underneath. It's nice because it's got some text on it. This is quite a speedy phase. You can choose to overlap any of your image at the top or not. It can be quite messy, this area, and by that I mean it's intentionally messy as far as I'm concerned. Bit of French ephemera paper from Tracy Fox, just whatever's in my little tub. I'm sticking to some of the neutrals. Let's get some of that on, overlapping. I will have a bit of washi. I feel like that goes really well with the zigzag on the picture, if I can get that off. It's a little bit there, just a bit extra. And what happened to my little bug? Have I covered it up already? Let's find a bug. Let's find another one. Oh, brilliant colours. I've got teal, and again I can marry that up with the teal in the sky, so that was meant to be. That could go on there. Love it. There's not much space to fill, so this piece, this step, is pretty quick. And I know that I'm going to trim a little bit off here, so I'm not going to go all the way down to the bottom of the page. I will add just a little bit of something extra. I wonder if I've got some green. I think I put some dark green in here. I can see something. Just the tiniest bit. This is like paint. When I use paper, I think of it like paint, that you're just mixing a palette, and if it's a really bold colour, you perhaps don't want too much of it. And I don't want to distract from the image, which is the front of our journal cover. So maybe something like that, and then I think just a little bit of something at the bottom, maybe some brown paper. Gorgeous wrapping paper I think I've splatted on this. Let's just tear off a little bit of that. Oh, it's even got teal paint on it. Perfect. That was meant to be. Maybe a little bit of that down there. Just get that on. How quick was this? Do I want it over? Yes, I'll just bring it together and maybe take that down. So how is that looking? Shall we have a look? The next thing we're going to do is add a sentiment and frame it. Let me give you some examples of the ones that I've done. So I've used an Arteza sentiment. You could write these yourself, you could do them in PowerPoint and cut them out. You could even pick words from a book page, any words you like. So I'm going to add a sentiment and then just add a little bit of a border, and I'll show you how I do that. So you can see the borders on these. I have used colours which reflect the image, and all of this coordination really helps, I think, bring it together. On this one I've got more bronze and gold because we've got these oranges and coppers coming through in the image here. So I'll pick a sentiment. I've just picked this one. It's quite large relative to the page, so just under half the width. I want it to be easily seen. It's an important part of the image today. So I'm not going to back it or mat it. I'm going to stick it straight on, and again, I don't want it plumb in the middle. Let's maybe have it just dropped to the left a bit over here. That's good. And now I'm going to go around it with some colours that coordinate. So the sorts of things you might want to use to do this, I've used pencils, and I can get some strong pigment. These are my watercolour pencils from Arteza. I will leave links in the description box down below to as many of these as I can. And also check out the description box for discount codes, which I do try to include as often as possible. Something else I like to use to frame this are my gorgeous Kuretake paints. These are Stationery Pal, and I'm also going to use my gold paint from Stationery Pal. In fact, I think I'll just go for it and dive in. I want to pick out maybe this green in the water. So let's have just a little bit of this. The paint in this palette is absolutely beautiful. It's creamy and very strong pigment, but there's not a huge variety of colours. Whereas another palette that I often use is my Arteza metallics, which are in this palette, and I have a bigger choice of colours in this one, so that's also a beautiful choice as well. Again, check out the discount codes in my video description box. Let's just see if I can get a little bit of a scratchy line. I don't want it to be a perfect line, just want it to enhance and frame that sentiment, but I also want the sentiment to look more a part of the image. Right, I've got some green, and I think I want to soften that. I'll go in my mucky yellow, just add a bit more. That's working for me, it's toned it down a bit. And then I'm also going to go around it with, I really like this, it's called Red Gold, and indeed it is in this set of 6. I'm going to just take that around it too. And it just seems to all look beautiful. And we're going to do some splats in a minute, which will mean that the gold around this sentiment just coordinates really well with the splats on the page as well. So I've got my sentiment. Let's just see where we're at. So what I need to do now is just trim it down a little bit so that it will be the perfect size for our light cardstock or indeed book page junk journal cover. And I know that I'm never going to have a book page that's perfectly the right size. So I look at the amount of gap there is between the book page and the edge of the journal cover, the cardstock. And I want that to be exactly the same when I've cut this off down here. And that tells me where I want to make a mark and just trim it off. So I can take my glue and just attach that, and you can see how it's coming together. So some strong glue at this stage, particularly around the edges. I'd prefer not to use liquid glue at this stage because I don't want buckling. I do want to avoid that. That's a really strong glue. So I'll get that on there. And this is the sort of journal I would fill it with lots of folded book pages and then use it for Junk Journal January, which, as I say, is a challenge run on Instagram, and with prompts we fill a journal page and then we share it with pictures. And it would be great if you could join in and play and just enjoy yourself. It's a really friendly group and it's a lot of fun, and you get to use your scraps and you get to develop as you create each page as well. I want to add a final flourish at this stage, so I think maybe a butterfly as an extra feature, particularly if it's got wings that can come up, something like that. And I feel that this one can take it. Not every page, not every journal cover will be able to take it, but I think this has a little bit of capacity up here. Maybe this one because it tones a bit better. I think I'll just add that up there. I think I'll add with my squidgy glue some just in the middle so the wings can sit up. And to bring it together, I said I would add a few paint splats. Maybe that needs to come in, then it's not sticking out of the side. I like that. So I've got emphasis up here and down there. I'm going to add a few little splats using the colours that went around the sentiment, not too much, just tone it down a bit. Just a little bit of green, just a little bit. A little bit of black, again, not too much, and this adds that vintage effect, gives it that sort of grungy, gorgeous, and of course, can't resist just a tiny bit of that gold. Isn't that absolutely stunning? Pre-made junk journal covers using old book pages. Check out the other videos in this Junk Journal January collaboration and follow me on Instagram. I'm joey_de_fee. I share a lot more footage of behind the scenes and what's on my desk and what I've been doing, and I will be sharing pages in my Junk Journal January journal, a bit like all of the pages I filled in Junk Journal July. So I do hope to see you soon.